Okay. Good evening and welcome to the February 15th, 2023 meeting of the Design Review Commission. This meeting is now called to order. We will begin with a roll call. Commissioner Cass.
Present.
Commissioner Gray.
Here.
Commissioner Seidel is also present. Both Commissioner Sim and Hadaloo are excused from this meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
So motion from Commissioner Gray and a second from Commissioner Cass. We will put it to a vote. Commissioner Gray?
Actually, can I pause for one moment? I wanted to add another business item.
Okay.
That under other business, if we could add what you mentioned before the meeting started, that we will be moving to public meetings, and just to talk a little bit about what that means and how we'll be doing that.
Yeah, I'm going to put that under Commissioner report. So that will
Okay,
be
great. Thank you.
reports. Yes, so that
Other
will
than that.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you vote to approve the agenda. Commissioner Cass.
Aye.
And Commissioner Seidel is also aye. So the motion carries to approve the agenda or to adopt the agenda. And now we can open it to the public for comments for items not on this or an upcoming agenda and within the purview of this commission.
If anyone would like to make a comment not on for items on the agenda, please use the raise hand function. No hands are raised.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Next, we have the consent calendar. So there are two items on the consent calendar. Do we approve these as one motion or as two separate things?
Sorry for
We
jumping
would
in.
probably do them together if we can, or separate, but I have a question about one of these consent items. And I don't know if that means I have to take it out of the consent calendar. Am I allowed to ask the applicant any questions?
If you're going to ask anything, it should be pulled from the consent calendar.
Then I would like Mr. Is it Chopra? His item pulled out of the consent calendar. I have very little to ask, but.
Okay.
And maybe we can have it first.
Okay. Do we need to reapprove the agenda or modify the agenda if we're pulling it from the, okay, so then on the consent calendar, the only item will be to approve the draft meeting minutes from January 25th.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that. They look good.
Okay, and then we will vote Commissioner Cass.
Aye.
Commissioner Gray.
Hi.
And Commissioner Seidel, I also approve, so the motion carries. So the next item will be to have a brief, I guess, discussion of HDP 27-22, which is the project for Chopra located at, where's the address? Sorry. Is the address?
St. Mary's.
It's on St. Mary's.
It's an unaddressed parcel on St.
Unaddressed
Mary's.
parcel, thank you. On Hillside Overlay District on St. Mary's Road. Glenn, why don't you start with your question?
So is the applicant present?
He is. I will promote him.
Okay.
Mr. Chopra, can you hear us? Are you in the meeting?
Yes, I can hear you. Hope you guys can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you and we can see you. Thank you for allowing us to ask a couple more questions. Glenn, I'll let you take it away.
Yes, I was reviewing the landscape plan again and also the site visit. I noticed that there was an outcropping of a rundo on your property. Are you familiar with what a rundo is?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, it sort of looks like
It's on the-
bamboo. It sort of looks like bamboo. And it's right located, it's near one of the support stakes for the story poles.
Is it
And
is it like a big bunch of?
it's a big clump, yes.
Yes, you're right. It's been there for a while, and I think so. Basically, we had cut it down, but I think it's something that you cannot get rid of. So we are gonna similar. So the neighbors on 3431, the Knights, would also like that removed. So I think at some point in time we'll have to sort of dig it, because I think it's a very invasive kind of.
Yeah, it's an invasive species. And the city has been trying to get rid of it near creek properties, and I noticed that was on your property. So I just want to make sure that the resolution on the landscape issue, that we address that, include that on the landscape issue.
Absolutely.
That Arunda be taken out. By the way, it should come out much easier. It has a really extensive root network.
Right.
But if you're excavating or grading, your grader can get a foot down and he can pull that up.
Absolutely.
And then anything that remains, any outcropping of roots that remain, you can just hit it with a little Roundup and that will kill it. But if you don't do that in combination, it will come back. It will always
you're right.
coming back.
You're right. We did that. We did that, and it grew back within 3 months.
Yes. Yeah. If you don't hit, in fact, when you cut it, it's sort of weird because it is sort of like bamboo. So it's sort of open stem. When you cut it, you have to get the Roundup in there right away because it sort of closes on itself.
I see.
And if the Roundup doesn't get into that stem, it won't penetrate and it won't kill off the root structure. And the root structure is as extensive as the height of the bamboo.
Got it.
Okay. So I'm ready to make a motion for adoption of the resolution with the caveat of adding to the landscape item, the removal of the Arunda.
I will second that motion. Kristen, you're muted.
Sorry, and we will take it to a vote. Commissioner Cass,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
and I also vote in favor of approving the resolution with the addition as mentioned by Commissioner Cass. So your project is approved. There is a 10-day appeal period, and you will obviously need to apply for the appropriate building permits, but congratulations, you can move on to the next phase towards building your home.
Thank you so much, guys. I really, really appreciate your time and effort on this.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a study session for a new 2-story, 2,353 square foot single family residence to be located at 3515 St. Mary's Road. And I believe, Nancy, you will be presenting the project to us.
Chair, before we start, could I say one thing?
Of course.
I visited the property last Sunday and the Caldwells were home, and I did speak with them briefly. Rebecca Caldwell in particular, we spoke for a few minutes. I explained to her that it's a public process and that I was not going to ask her any questions nor give her any advice or opinions. But I did talk a little bit about process when she had some questions there. But I wanted to share that publicly so that for the record, I did have a conversation with the applicant prior.
Thank you for sharing that, and we will make sure it is part of the record. So thank you.
Let me just share my screen. Evening, commissioners. It's Chair, Planning Department staff. The item before you is SS 0123 for Caldwell, located at 3515 St. Mary's Road. They are proposing, they have conceptual plans to propose to replace the existing 1,500 square foot 1-story single family home, which is currently sited over 2 separate lots in common ownership. The entire lot, the 2 lots combined, is approximately 0.9 acres, is on the south side of St. Mary's Road near the intersection of Moraga, and is zone R10. This is the site plan showing their proposal with the two legal lots of record, 1 and 2. They were proposing it on the eastern lot, lot 1, and would be located within the building envelope and would not require any variances. The left image shows the two parcels in the recorded subdivision. A recent certificate of compliance was issued confirming the two separate legal lots and that were never merged. These are the floor plans of the preliminary project. The lower level with a front attached garage, and then the upper level set back behind the garage. Here are elevations and sample images of the modular design. And staff received 2 public comments, one from Michael Hirsch and the other from Matt and Morgan Bernstein, 3518 Earl Place. They had concerns about the 2-story structure and the effects on privacy. Since this is a study session for feedback on the preliminary design, no actions required, and this concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Nancy. Are there any commissioner questions for Nancy?
Yeah, I have one. Do you happen to know where the Hirsches are located? Are they nearby neighbor or are they distant?
They are adjacent. They are at the rear, so they share the rear property line.
Thank you.
I believe it
I'm
was
sorry.
the
I'm sorry.
Bernsteins
The
who were
Bernstein.
behind.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, that's correct. The Bernsteins are behind. The Hirsches, they did not indicate their location.
Any other commissioner questions? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I had a question. Nancy, would you mind putting the site plan back up? There was a site plan in the applicant's package that showed the proposed side yard setback as 73 feet. And it looks to me like the way it was measured, and it might be that drawing there, but you can't really see it in this clip. Well, there it is. So that's 73 feet. It seems to me that if you measure to the closest point of the property line, it would be closer. If you did an offset of 70 from the property line, the required setback, is that what we see in the dashed line?
The dash line should be the required setback.
Okay, so clearly we're within the required setback. The 73 feet, I'm not sure accurately represents it, but maybe it's unimportant. The other question I had on here, the pale blue line that's very almost invisible, is the creek setback over on the property, the dot dash line that touches the steps at the house. Yeah, down. Yeah. There. You can't see it either. It's very light.
Oh, this?
Yes. So scroll down so we can see the house again. It just barely clips those front steps. See that? Is that acceptable or is that not acceptable to touch the creek setback with that kind of structure?
Since it is a permanent structure, it would not be acceptable. Well, not necessarily. They would need a creek exception from City Council, but staff would probably recommend them pulling it out before going to get their entitlements.
Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. So Nancy, I assume the applicant has a presentation?
I will be promoting Rebecca Caldwell and Paul Caldwell. Neil Caldwell is also in attendance.
Hello. I think Paul's preferring to just watch.
Okay.
And Neil too. We just need me. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. I prepared a PowerPoint. And so I prepared a PowerPoint and I'll be discussing context for the project. And then after me and my husband, Neil, Connect Homes will be discussing the house in more detail. So if I can share my screen. Do I share it myself?
I think so.
Okay.
Shifts of high privileges.
It should let you share.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there. Right down there. That green arrow.
Okay. Keynote. Share. Is it working? Okay. All right. Let me just, okay. Okay. So we are the Caldwells, and we hope to build a modest and modern home for our growing family. Neil is a public school teacher. I'm a clinical psychologist. Jonah enjoys picking apples from the backyard tree that was planted by his great-great-grandparents. And Paul and Stephen Caldwell are Neil's father and uncle, and they co-own the property. They both grew up here, served as public school teachers, and continue to reside in the Bay Area. Our family has been a part of Lafayette for 75 years, and we hope to continue contributing to the community. So in 1944, what was a commercial pear orchard was purchased by Bob and Myrtle Mills. They bought 2 adjacent parcels and built a small ranch home in the center of them to maximize privacy. In 1965, they passed the house down to Don and Gladys Caldwell, and then they passed it down to their sons, Paul and Steve, who have been renting it out to tenants since 2004. It's rare for a property to go unchanged for generations. It's also rare for a property near downtown to be so spacious. Our neighbors may have grown accustomed to the current layout of the double lot, and we are sympathetic to those who feel apprehensive about a transition. In 2022, the City of Lafayette granted us a certificate of compliance, which reestablished 2 independent legal lots of record. We are proposing a demolition of the 1,500 square foot structure that straddles the 2 lots, and we hope to build a single-family home on Lot 1. Lot 2 will be in the possession of Steve Caldwell, and he has no clear plans for it. Pictured in gray is a possible future for that lot. An alternative path might be to sell both lots to a developer who could site SB9 and build several dwellings on each lot. And they would, of course, bypass design review, and they could build multiple multi-story houses. But we prefer to keep it in the family. So after setbacks were determined, we assessed the buildable space, which is outlined in yellow. And so due to the creek setback, most of the lot is very narrow. We feel we have little choice but to build up to 2 stories. The proposed residence is a modest 2,500 square foot, 3-bedroom home. If we were to build further east over here, we would encroach upon the mature native oak canopy and block the view of the creek for our south side neighbors. After extensive research, we hired Connect Homes to take on our project. They are an established and reputable company, and there is a precedent for their homes in the region. We have personally toured or visited their houses that exist in Orinda, Walnut Creek, and Palo Alto. They have a working relationship with many local vendors, and all of these vendors have endorsed their product and praised the experience of working with their team. We believe that the impact of this project would be minimal, and we strive to be conscientious of our neighbors. Our south side neighbors, the Bernsteins, would be the most impacted. What faces them would be the primary bedroom and an open atrium. For the bedroom, we would install window treatments that maximize privacy. We can plant trees and tall hedges along the property line, and we're also open to their input about exterior colors and finishes. There is a precedent in the neighborhood for 2-story and modern homes. There are several in the vicinity, and this new build with the arrows is around 100 yards away from us. And Neil's going to discuss landscaping.
Yeah, so,
Wait it.
oh yeah,
Computer, turn yours on. Just
okay,
sit here.
sure.
We're gonna switch spots.
We'll just switch spots. Okay, so for the landscaping, our plan in the front is to remove the existing lawn and replace it with mulch substrate and drought tolerant native and or Mediterranean trees, grasses, and shrubs. And we plan to consult the Trees for Lafayette master plan document, which I've looked over a bit. And there's some really nice selections there. For example, this Arbutus unato, it's a type of madrone that would do well here. We plan to plant a privacy hedge along the property line east of the driveway, screening the sidewalk on St. Mary's Road. And some ideas of shrubs there would be a bayberry, like in the photo, or perhaps a pittosporum. And then we plan to install a concrete driveway with paver edging and accents along it, kind of segmenting it.
Do this.
Then for the rear, we plan to have an enclosed fence area, which is outlined in red. And we plan to install a wired deer fence along the east and north portions. So there's the existing fence that's there to the south. We'd install the wired deer fence there. Oops, sorry, just to play. And then in blue shows the plan for a deck. It's going to wrap around the east side of the house. It will be Trex decking. In the enclosed area, we plan to install artificial turf bordered by planting beds. And then in the planting beds on the south side bordering our neighbors, we plan to plant privacy screen trees and or hedges. Again, an idea was podocarpus, wax myrtle, or even non-fruiting olive could be nice, and something that is fast growing, appropriate height, and minimal mess ideally. And then east of the fence, we plan to plant some more dry shade shrubs, such as copyberry, gooseberry, maybe some mimulus. So that is our landscaping plan.
Okay, thank you. And now Connect Homes will take over. Let's see, Lewis is the representative there. Nancy, if you're needing to promote him. Okay. Oh, do we
Go
have?
ahead, John.
I just want to point out there is a 10-minute time limit for applicant presentation. I think we're 7 minutes into that.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. So as we can see here, we have some additional information regarding the proposed project. We do have an elevation here with the selected materials that we plan on using, as well as some additional samples of some of our built homes in the area. Mainly this one is in the next town over in Orinda on Sun Hill Rise Road. And so this gives a better idea of how our homes fit on a property and how, once you allow the landscape plan that can be implemented by Neil and give it time, the home really blends into its surroundings. I know there are concerns about privacy and the way Rebecca addressed it as well. In this home here, we do have this atrium from this second story level that looks down towards the back, so there won't be anyone or any sort of visibility into the neighbor's lot. And as you can see here, this is the view from that atrium space. So there really is no, this space would just be for the benefit of Rebecca and Neil to enjoy the sunlight from that southern view. And then going back to, we can also see here, there's a way to use the materiality. We do encourage our clients to use wood siding to sort of break up these surfaces. There is right now, part of our proposal is this privacy screen as part of our inset deck. And as well, we are using multiple awnings that will be above doors and windows and in any other fenestrations on the structure. And then here we see the palette that we are using right now. These are exterior lights. These are the aluminum windows that we use that are anodized. And then the selection of colors for the siding, which will be a fiber cement lap siding that will be along the lines of some of the homes in the neighborhood of Lafayette. Any questions or?
Is that the conclusion of your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do.
Okay. Go right
You showed us elevations, colored elevations, which I don't believe we had in the packet that staff distributed us. I see this one. This is almost completely sort of deep charcoal gray.
Right.
I hadn't seen elevations with colors proposed. Do you have the other elevations shown in color now?
We do not, but we plan on having that for the full complete design review package.
Okay, I'll save the rest for the comment section. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other commissioner questions? No. And so I believe that since this is a study session, do we go to public comment, Nancy? Yeah.
If anyone would like to make comments on this application, please use the raise hand function. And there are two hands raised. One is Robert Lavoy. Noting him now.
And Nancy, before, so you have 3 minutes, Robert Lavoy.
Thank you, and hello, everybody. So I wanted to provide some comments. I didn't have time to get a letter in prior to noon, I'm sorry. So I'm the Caldwell's west neighbor. I've been in my house since 1990, so I knew his grandfather, Don, and his uncles and dad. I would say I'm generally supportive of the project. I'd rather personally see a single story home, but I also know that this may be part of their cost management for the project, and it's difficult to build a home these days. So I'm hoping they can build their dream home, and but I also appreciate the concerns by the neighbors, especially the ones to the south. Regarding the two lots, my lot's 13,000 square feet, and that's 38,000. So even split in half, it's over almost 50% more than mine. So I know the neighbors on the south have a similarly large lot. So I'm happy to see the old residence updated. I was happy to see that the second story had the atrium and the master bedroom as the south facing windows. So that primarily is, low activity areas. And obviously the atrium isn't something that somebody's going to sit in and peer into the neighbor's yard. So hopefully, even though the house is bigger, it's not, encroaching on the privacy, and that can be screened out with landscaping. They could consider higher windows, or even maybe stepping back the top floor on the bedroom side a little bit to add additional isolation if that's necessary. So I did send in a letter with more details because I see I'm running out of time. Also, it looks like the house is set up maybe a foot above the and perhaps that could be reduced by some modest grading on, you know, under 3 feet, so there's no engineered retaining walls. And then you could have like patios on the back instead of a deck, which would probably save some money. So it's just a thought of a way to reduce the massing a little bit. Let's see. So I guess that's about it. Oh, regarding the story, Blackheart's house, just west of us, was grandfathered in because they had a 900 square foot 1939 farmhouse that was 2 stories, and so they've replicated that, but the rest of their house is a single story. And there is one 2-story house on O'Connor, which is a block north and west.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm next promoting Morgan Bernstein.
Okay, welcome. You are in the meeting and have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Hi, we just wanted to introduce ourselves to the committee. We are the Bernstein family, Matt, Morgan, and our 2 children, Dylan and Hunter, and we reside in the property immediately south of the Caldwells. And so we did submit a letter earlier today, which is for public review. But we just wanted to get on and introduce ourselves and, you know, acknowledge for Rebecca and Neil that, you know, we fully understand your desire to build your forever home and to, you know, make good use of this property that has been in your family for generations. We don't have that long-standing history in Lafayette. We've been here about 6 years, but also recently went through a remodel, and so can appreciate the challenges of this process and the desire to create something that's just right for your family. I think, like you noted about the original intent of the property, our desire as well when we chose 3518 Rowe Place was to maximize privacy. And we selected this space here because it was a large lot, because they were traditional homes, because there was ample privacy for our family and our children to play in the backyard and to really just enjoy this neighborhood. And so, you know, our concerns are not so much that you want to build a, you know, 2,700 square foot home for your family. It's the specific 2-story construction that is 24 feet from our primary living space. And, you know, yes, we have been lucky, if you would, that the current residence is situated 60 feet from our shared property line. But as is with the 60 feet, as you know, we have a 6-foot fence in place, but we still see glimpses of each other when we're in our backyards. And so when we suddenly now have a 2-story home that is just 24 feet from the property, that will be looking directly into our backyard, our main bedroom, our living room, our dining area, even with that atrium space as noted. And so our hope is that, you know, the Caldwell family, as well as everyone involved in this review process, will consider some alternatives. And that could range from exploring other construction vendors for a 1-story home. My understanding is that the Connect Home 1-story options are somewhat limited, but there are a number of other vendors who might be able to provide something that's a 1-story that fits within the confines of the space. And if necessary, if a proceeding of the 2 stories does move forward, to think about other arrangements, window configurations, and particularly tall screening hedges that would be in the range of 20 to 30 feet.
Okay, thank you for your concerns. And we now give the applicant a chance for a rebuttal.
Did you want to ask if there were any other?
Oh, are there any commissioner questions?
Or
Sorry,
rebuttal?
prior to the rebuttal. Okay.
No.
I see no other hands raised, so I will bring back the applicant.
So you're in the meeting and have 5 minutes total.
Okay. Overall, thank you all for your comments, and we'll take everything into consideration. We also this afternoon did get a copy of the letter from the Bernstein, so we will, continue to consider their points. Just for the record, it's a 2,500 square foot house, not 2,700. And I think a lot of neighbors didn't realize that this property has always been 2 lots. So maybe there's like an assumption that it was always going to stay that way. And I'm sorry that that was not known before. And yeah.
Oh, and it was mentioned that the proposed new construction will be 24 feet away from the property line. And so it was cited like 24 feet away from our living room and stuff. But I just wanted to note that their house is actually also the main rooms and ours is situated probably I haven't done the calculation, but 50 feet. So quite a distance from the fence. So it's not 24 feet from their actual like living room and whatnot. So I just wanted that to be noted.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we're still not building up to the property line. And I feel like that's the point of property line or of setbacks. Sorry, we're not building up to the setback.
And then the Commissioner Gray asked about the dark gray charcoal color, and that we are not attached to any colors. We're more like interested in what you all think it should be, and we would go with that.
Okay. Thank you. So do you have additional rebuttal, or does that pretty much conclude your response?
I think if it's okay, if we could share for the design review process, like a more sort of like a tighter response, if that's
of course. So just to give you a little bit of visibility. So this study session is just to discuss concerns that your neighbors may have. It's for you to start to understand them. And it's for us as the Design Review Commission to help give you insights into what we look at for an approval. So as you move forward in this process, you will have a lot of opportunity to refine the design, to refine your understanding of how to make your proposed project fit best into your neighborhood. So there's definitely an ongoing development that you will be working with.
Okay, then, I guess a question I have is, so if the neighborhood is indeed zoned for 2-story houses, what's the rationale for that to be challenged? Especially given that, as of last year, SB 9 was passed. There's also the recent deadlines that, multiple municipalities didn't meet the deadline for. And so I've heard that it's just like sort of open season for developers right now. And I'm just trying to like reconcile how developers can sort of do what they want and build, tall buildings and not go through design review. And so, but it feels like a confusing contradiction that we then would be so challenged on a 2-story home, like a single family 2-story home.
So those are all good questions. And I would say that this process does not mean that any question a neighbor or a citizen brings up becomes a determination. So it's more that there is an opportunity to discuss these things. There are obviously, as you mentioned, are planning and zoning codes, there are building codes, there are many things that are considered. So what we're trying to do here is to get an understanding of those considerations and have a dialogue about them. So I think you'll find it very enlightening to have some feedback from all the commissioners, and it will give you hopefully a better picture into the next steps in the process.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioners, who would like to start with comments?
I can start if you'd like.
Sure.
So first of all, just kind of regarding what we're looking at and what are the bounds of how we might look at this project. there are zoning requirements, as Kristen mentioned. And, at first blush, I don't see anything here that is out of compliance with our zoning requirements regarding height, regarding setbacks, regarding, the most basic things. There are also residential design guidelines in Lafayette. I'm not sure if the Caldwells have looked at those. They look a little dated, but there's actually very good material in there. And Rebecca and Neil, if you haven't looked at that, I would certainly recommend it. That said, I think the general aesthetic of the house, while modern, it seems to be like it could really not have trouble complying with the residential design guidelines, which include provisions to help break down mass. You does not have a single large blocky building. It's worth looking at, but I don't think you'll have difficulty complying with that. The other things that we cover here have to do with minimizing impact on neighboring properties. And that, is always very specific to a project and not something that the design guidelines can be specific about. I think the Bernsteins have legitimate concerns about privacy, and it's worth looking at how to address those. I do not believe that the project has to be entirely reconceived, as they have suggested they would prefer. Rather, I think there can be, just some acknowledgement in the design that you're going to look at what the privacy impact really is, and you're going to mitigate it. Tall screening shrubs or trees is kind of an obvious one. And to demonstrate what you plan there, I would recommend that when you come back to us, you show a site section that includes the Bernstein house in the same way that you showed a site section more parallel to St. Mary's Road. Those are very useful drawings, and show the intended screen planting as part of that. If you are going to have significant windows that view from the south side of your house, consider what the sight lines are. Do you have a direct line of sight from your bedroom or from the landing adjacent to your atrium to the Bernstein's backyard? And can you mitigate that by adjustments in windows or by screen planting? And demonstrate that in your drawings, because the Bernsteins deserve to have their concerns addressed. But as I say, I'm not sure that you need to reconceive the design to do that. I would point out, as others have suggested here, that compared to what could happen on this piece of land, the proposed development is quite modest, and that the new laws under SB 9 could give you something you are much more unhappy with than what is proposed right here. If the Caldwells, it seems to me, are proposing to do a reasonable level of development on this piece of land, and with a little bit of mitigation, they can be very good neighbors. So, and specifically regarding the color question that I had earlier, which does relate to the Lafayette residential design guidelines. You'll see a lot of homes that have multiple materials, especially the newer ones, the more modern ones. I recommend, and actually many of the ones that were shown as examples by Connect Homes had multiple materials that were arranged in a kind of an elegant way. I recommend you consider things that break down the monolithic appearance of the house. And with that, good luck with your project. We look forward to meeting with you again.
Thank you, John. Glenn?
Yes. I was very interested in this project because we haven't seen too many prefabricated homes come before us. And I can think of one that was proposed on doing that was horrible because it was very boxy. So I was looking at this to see what articulation there was. It is a little bit boxy, but it is, I can see that they have introduced articulation into it. As far as the concern about 2 stories versus 1, just so the applicant knows, is that we do look at the character of the neighborhood. So you're right, there are just a handful of 2 stories nearby. It's not a predominant 2-story neighborhood, but we look at the character of the neighborhood, whether or not that has merit about keeping it a one-story neighborhood or not. I actually think that the two-story will work. However, I think that more consideration needs to be done to the plantings that would shield the neighbors to the south. So they're proposing wax myrtle. The nice thing about the wax myrtle is it will grow 6 feet above the fence. It will get to that 12 feet really fast, and then it won't get to 20 feet for another 15 years. Okay, so I'm not sure that wax myrtle is really going to hide someone looking out of the second-story bedroom down in the backyard of the Bernsteins. I would suggest that maybe you actually look at trees to be putting in there, evergreen trees that would have foliage and would provide that additional screening higher up. And you could do live oaks or you could do cork oaks. That would be two species that fall into, more native species here, Mediterranean species that will exist in that neighborhood. So I see it as a viable project. I just think it needs some tweaking in order to make it work successfully.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. I concur with my fellow commissioners. I don't have any concerns about a two-story home on this site. I do think it's worth being sensitive to your neighbors, and the first public comment did ask if there are ways to perhaps have the home sit a little lower on the site. So I'm not sure what is driving the foundation height above grade, but that might be one thing you could look at that would create some goodwill towards your neighbors and reducing the height a little bit. I also would echo what John has said about trying to break up the massing with more variety of materials. And I think as you look at the guidelines, the residential design guidelines, you'll get a better understanding of that directive. The other thing that I would like to say related to that is that I like the modern design. I think it's appropriate. I think it's well conceived and overall well proportioned. It does feel a little boxy. And the Lafayette design guidelines do emphasize things that are have a more dispersed massing and are a little more horizontal. I think the element of the metal awnings on the house or the areas in which it does it starts to achieve a little bit of so it starts to diffuse the boxiness. And I wonder if there are other landscape elements you could do that would be maybe a little independent from the house that would soften up the boxiness. I also think that plantings are going to be a critical element that you will need to do to both achieve and demonstrate the privacy needed towards your neighboring properties. So overall, I think you have a good proposal. I think the developments that look more at all the items that my fellow commissioners have mentioned are critical. And I would just want to echo one thing that we look for is a clear demonstration that you are achieving these guidelines and considerations of privacy. So we often look at projects that we think are probably achieving it, but it's not clear because we don't see the site sections that cut through the neighbors, or we don't see sightline drawings that demonstrate that windows have been located or oriented to minimize views. So part of it is doing a solid, good, thoughtful design. And the other part that we like to see is a documentation and demonstration of that. So I think you're off on a great path. I think that we are supportive of the overall aesthetic, the overall siting, and the overall style and design. It just needs to be refined to the next level. One thing I will say, John mentioned that it looks like it complies with all setbacks. His very first comment was about infringing a little bit on the creek setback. So it sounds like, based on what Nancy says, that you could get a variance for that. You might also just decide to move those steps over a little bit. So to the extent possible, if you can avoid that ever so slight overlap, it would probably make your life just a little bit easier if the module of the Connect Homes would allow you to do that. So commissioners, I don't know if you have any more comments. I think we gave a pretty clear set of next steps. And we wish you good luck with continuing to develop the design of your home. Okay, so next on our agenda is some new, sorry, do we have any? No, so no continued public hearings. Next, we have new public hearings, and it looks like we have Renata here to do a presentation for us. So this is for HDP 28-22, which is Holt, and it is for new construction or construction of a new 2,265 square foot home located at the intersection of Sierra Vista Way and Sessions Road. Renata, please take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. Before the commission again tonight is an application seeking reapproval. There are no proposed changes at this time to the previously approved project. The Lafayette Municipal Code, once entitlements are provided, those are valid for a year or until a building permit is issued. And an applicant can request a 1-year extension through written request. However, as described in the applicant narrative provided in the staff report, they were unable to meet that deadline. And as such, we must go through the public hearing process again to grant entitlements. So as previously stated, there are no proposed changes at this time. And both the Planning Commission and Design Review Commission previously held 4 public hearings each to review the proposal throughout 2020 and 2021. So staff did issue notices of public hearing for tonight's review. Letters were distributed to property owners, to over 70 property owners within 500 feet of the subject parcel, as well as all property owners up Sessions Road. Staff did receive 2 public comments. Both were mentioned the removal of protected trees. So under the city's tree protection ordinance, there is required mitigation for removal of trees, either as approved as part of the project or any that are harmed and damaged as a result of construction. So there would be mitigation required in both cases. There's also comment regarding the trail that leads up Sessions Road and into Briones Park. So there is a public access easement for the portion of Sessions Road that runs through the lot that then veers off onto other lots to a more not a paved trail like a roadway. And so that public access easement would be entirely unaffected by this proposal and would remain in place as part of that trail. So at this time, staff is seeking request that the commission hold a public hearing and find the project exempt from CEQA and adopt resolution 2023-03, reapproving the project to the previously defined conditions of approval. I'm available for any questions.
Yeah, I have some, Renata. Would you be able to show where the easement is on the site plan? Because the question that arises for me is that when we went through this project ages ago, there were comments about right now people park on Sierra Vista and then they walk up Sessions until they hit the trailhead and then go up there. And at that time, it looked to me like they were proposing that there'd be roughly 2 parking spaces, sort of at the, what would you call, the north west corner of the property. And by the way, I went there once and parked on those 2 spaces or one of those spaces. And as I was getting out of my car, a gentleman drove up Sessions Street. He stopped and he said, "What are you doing parking there?" I said, "Well, I'm going on the trailhead." And he said, "You can't park there." And I said, "Well, I just went through a session that said this was for public access to the trail." And he said, no, that's my property. And if you continue to park there, I will have you towed.
Okay.
So I'm interested in seeing, because that was the solution to some of the parking and congestion down at that intersection.
Sure. So here on your screen, you can see this is the shape of the lot. Here's Sierra Vista on the bottom and Sessions Road, which is the private road running towards the top of the screen. This 50-foot wide section is the public access area easement. So that property line to the border of, or sorry, the edges of that roadway. So public access, I believe, is different than the ability to park and leave a vehicle there. The idea being that people can walk to that area and walk along that roadway without it being or have permission to walk along that roadway. So this easement would remain in place as part of the proposal.
Okay, so does that easement have restrictions, no parking along that section of Sessions?
I'm not.
I mean,
certain
can
about
we
that level of
reduce
detail.
Sessions to a one-lane road by parking on the curb?
That would have to be a larger discussion with the property owner. I've not broached that topic at this time.
If I could speak to that for just a moment, what I believe the most recent site plan shows a 8 by 24 foot gravel pullout near the bottom of the hill, lower on the hill, Glenn, than where you and I had parked in the past. I believe, so it's on this applicant's property outside the easement, I believe offered for this public use purpose.
Okay, is there something I can see to actually see that?
Do you want me to share my screen, Renata, or do you
Yeah.
have it at your fingertips?
Sure.
It is on the A 1.1 site plan.
Okay, I have that up then.
So as I recall our discussion a year or so ago, or more than that, the pullout just below the word Sessions was provided in response to comments to provide public access parking that is within the applicant's lot.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. I didn't recognize that was what that was.
John, I think you also had some questions.
I did. Renata, the public comment by the Swartzes make some very serious allegations about willful destruction of mature trees. I don't really know how to respond to that within our purview. It's a serious allegation for sure. And if it were demonstrated to be true, I'd like to understand what that does to the site, to how the site will exist compared to what we've approved in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Does this need to be investigated? I mean, I'm not taking it just at face value, but if it were true, it's very serious.
Yes, so the city can only respond to code enforcement issues on a complaint basis. So I do not believe that there was a code enforcement case filed with regards to this allegation. And as such, if regardless of the cause of the death of a tree, we have the tree protection ordinance, which does protect these trees as they are on a vacant lot in the Hillside Overlay District. So as far as mitigation, if these trees are unable to survive, we would need to reassess the kind of landscaping and or other interventions, given these trees were intended to be retained as part of privacy screening. So we would have to revisit that aspect if the trees were not
I mean,
viable.
I wonder if an arborist could visit the site and determine if there have been substantial changes since the last report. And if so, do we need a new report?
Sure, and I'll let the applicant speak to that, perhaps as an option.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I believe we will bring the applicant in for a 10-minute present or up to 10-minute presentation.
Yes, so I'm inviting Tim Ward, Robin Holt, Spencer Holt. So Tim, there should be a pop-up window asking you to join as a panelist.
We still don't see you in the meeting. Hopefully you see the pop-up button. There you go. So we see Tim Ward.
And I think Tim may be the only one representing the applicant team.
So Tim, you are in the meeting and have 10 minutes to do a presentation. And you are muted, so we don't hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We sure can. Go right ahead.
I guess that sounds like an ad. My name's Tim Ward, and we started the project back in 2019.
Tim, your connection is, Tim, we can't understand anything you're saying, unfortunately. Tim, I'm wondering if it would be better. I don't know if you have phoned in or if you were using the internet, but we couldn't understand what you were saying. You had a poor connection.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Oh, well, now you're better. Maybe keep going.
Okay. So anyway, unfortunately, we weren't able to act on the project because of issues beyond our control, and as I think Renata was saying, the application really hasn't changed. As far as poisoning the trees, this is the first that I've ever heard of it. And also I know that Robin Holt, it's the first time she'd ever heard of anything like this. So we really don't have any knowledge of what that would be. Other than that, I can answer questions on other issues or the house itself. What we've tried to do, and I don't know if you remember this, but we made a few iterations on the project to keep the protection and the privacy to the neighbors to the east. We turned windows, and at this point, the closest window that even looks toward their property is about 50 feet, 48 feet from the nearest point of their house. And it's quite a bit. It's up the hill quite a bit. I think, it is difficult because there are a number of planning issues where, as the terms have said, their house is about 6 feet off the property line. And that does kind of create more privacy issues than if we both were 20 feet apart. But anyway, that basically is I can answer questions, but that's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Any commissioner questions for the applicant? I don't know if we'd like him to speak directly to the tree question.
Well, so I don't know if you can answer this. I would like to know that the plan that we approved, any of the trees that are shown as existing to remain are still in good health, such that the plan that we approved a couple of years ago, in fact, is still what is going to go forward.
I don't know that. I really don't know.
You're breaking up a little bit.
maybe
Yeah,
maybe Robin Holt knows. Can
Okay.
you hear me?
you're breaking up. It sounds as though you're saying
That.
you don't know that and you would need the homeowner to speak to that. So I think that, oh, and here is Robin Holt.
Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah.
Okay. Robin Holt, you are in the meeting. You're on mute. If you are able to specifically address the question of the tree health currently, that would be very helpful. We don't hear you, unfortunately. I think maybe something is wrong with your microphone because you are not on mute, but we don't hear you. We don't hear you. Are you able to phone in? I believe there's a phone in number. Renata, do you know that number off the top of your head? Thank you. So if you call 669-900-9128, you would be able to join via the audio on your phone. I believe Renata will have to promote you to a panelist, so it may take a second.
I don't yet see a phone number, but I'll definitely promote once they're in.
Thank you.
Well, perhaps we can move on and then if she connects.
I guess what we would be moving on to would be other public comment. I don't know if it seems like it's relevant to understand the tree issue. I guess while she's waiting, Renata, should we open it up to other public comment?
Let's see. I think it would be helpful to get that response first. Robin, maybe I can just call you and I can put you on speakerphone. That actually might be easiest. Oh, there we go. All right, would you try and speak now, please, Robin?
So you're in the meeting.
Oh, we hit start. Yeah, there you go.
Go ahead and speak. We should be able to hear you.
All right. Well, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Keep
Yes.
going. Yes.
All right. Well, I wasn't prepared to speak, and I never heard a thing about the tree issue until today at 5 o'clock when I saw the letter from the neighbors. I mean, you know, of course, I didn't poison trees. I mean, why would I? Why would anyone? And how would you? And I'm very upset at being even accused of that. But let's not go there. It's just a ridiculous claim. I haven't even looked at the property in a long time. Maybe some trees are dying. I know nothing about it. I mean, I certainly didn't do anything about trees. The last time I looked, there were a couple of trees in the middle looking brown. they certainly, the trees along the edge of the property line with the neighbors were healthy and fine.
Okay, I think that,
That's all I can tell you. I mean, this tree issue just feels out of the blue to me, frankly,
well, I
and
think that's all-
inappropriate.
I think that's all we needed. So we appreciate that information. And thank you for speaking unexpectedly, but it was very helpful and we appreciate the effort to get you on the phone. So I think that covers what we needed from the applicant. And now at this point, we can open it up to other public comment.
If you would like to make a comment on this item, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. We have one hand raised, Pamela Swartz is being promoted now.
Okay,
Hi.
Pamela. Hi, you're in the meeting. You have 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. So you know as well, Pamela and Jeff Swartz at 1139 Sierra Vista Way. We're just south of the project. And thank you all for reading our letter today. So I won't bother to take our time to reiterate a lot of that, but I did want to address a few things. The tree situation, yes, is very serious. And we sent some pictures to show you kind of the before and after of what we're seeing now. Our tenant actually saw somebody on the property doing something to the trees. And what was very suspect is that the trees where the house would be situated, they seem to be all dead and brown, whereas the trees kind of where the house wouldn't be exactly situated seem to be fine. So it appears to be very odd that some trees would suddenly be okay on the edge and some on the middle are not. And certainly, as we all know, those trees that are supposed to be protecting our privacy are very critical. I'm not accusing Mrs. Holt of doing anything. I'm just observing what we are seeing out there and wanted to bring it to your attention. If we do need to file some kind of complaint with code enforcement, please advise us to do that. I also wanted to mention something about the pullout that Mr. Cass was addressing. I'm really unclear on how that was supposed to work because there were variances to the setbacks that were granted, and so I don't understand how parking is going to be available there. It'd be really nice to have a little bit more clarity on that. We also know that a lot of the windows were changed in the last meeting to protect our privacy, which we really appreciate. But I believe there might be one more east-facing window that is still facing our direction, and we would request that also be reoriented because right now it would peer right down into our backyard and our bedroom areas. And also the retaining wall. So the retaining wall is where the driveway is supposed to be is literally about less than 10 feet from our bedrooms, our 4 bedrooms. All of our bedrooms are on that side of the house. And we would like to request also some kind of sound wall as opposed to just the barrier that they proposed earlier, because the lights and the noise from those vehicles are going to be right there at our bedroom. And I just don't feel that area that was addressed fully on the last go around. And as regards to the trail easement, we're told that the trail easement is the road and that there haven't been any incidents up to now, but for the last 30 some years, the reason why there haven't been any incidents is because people don't walk on the road. They walk through lot 66, and there used to be stairs there that were removed over the years when this application came through. So we are very concerned about hikers going up Sessions Road and would advise the city to kind of signage or some kind of safety measures in that regard. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Renata, are there any other public comments?
If you would like to speak on this matter, please use the raise hand function. And there are no other hands raised.
Okay. So the applicant has a time for a brief rebuttal if the applicant would like to add any information in response to the public comment.
I'd like to, if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, a couple things. The only reason we had the pullout was because people talked about all the traffic that gets bottlenecked there. We aren't proposing it because we want it. It was just simply a place so that if someone had to pull out and pull over to come up Sessions Road, that we'd offer that area to do it. So it wasn't anything we need. It's just purely we thought we were answering that problem. The second thing is that the easement for the road and the trail is 50 feet wide. It's approximately about 12 feet wide from the edge of the road to the edge of the easement. So there is quite a bit of area. People don't have to walk on the street. And this is especially on the low side. The other side is pretty steep, so you couldn't walk there anyway. And we did some studies of that retaining wall, where the backup of the parking, and they asked us to make the wall tall enough so that headlights weren't going to be seen to the neighbors. And as you can see there in the plan, it's about 12 feet off the property line, that pullout, where it's mainly for back out. So we certainly could, raise it if if they wanted it, but already it's quite a bit from their patio, which is actually on our property, that lower patio. You can see that retaining wall and the lower patio there. We're quite a bit above that already with retaining wall. Obviously the trees, we want to save the trees. You can see in the landscape plan, we've added quite a few trees because that was all for the screening. And so it's really important to us to save the trees also. That's all I've got. Maybe Robin has something else.
We don't hear you, Robin, because you're not on your phone. I don't.
There we go.
There, yeah.
I'd just like to go on the public record as saying, I think it's extremely serious when you accuse a Lafayette citizen of something like poisoning trees. It's very serious. It's very upsetting. It's very unwarranted. It's very shocking. I'm absolutely mortified. And I want my testimony to go on the public record that this is just unconscionable to accuse me of something like that.
All right. Thank you both for those comments.
Okay.
I think that completes the rebuttal period and completes the public comment period. From this, let's go to, sorry, John.
I have a question on something Mr. Ward stated.
Okay.
And Renata, this maybe is a question for both of you. Mr. Ward pointed out that some of the Swartz's landscape is actually on the Holt property. Is that correct? The patio, hardscape?
I'll have to ask Tim to come back in to clarify that statement. But it does look like down here, there is a patio.
I mean, maybe that's a question also for the Swartzes, because if that's the case, and they're using the Holt's property for their use, I question that as an ongoing use.
So Tim did
as far as I know.
Oh, go ahead, Ms.
As far
Holt.
as I know, that has always been on our property. And my husband just said, let it go. It isn't worth squabbling over.
And is it?
But it is on our property.
And it's space they use. It's not just landscape space. They could stand there and enjoy the outdoors?
I actually don't know the details. I just know it is on our property. And if Tim was still here, he would tell you he had to wiggle the design of the house around that.
Okay. John,
Okay.
does that answer your question?
Without, as far as it can, without actually me going there and trying to figure that out. Yes, it does.
I mean, it appears to be there on the site plan and the survey, so. Okay. All right, from there, I think we can go to commissioner comments unless there are additional questions or clarifications.
I'll
Glenn?
start. Okay, I'm ready to approve the project as it is designed. Okay, and the tree issue, from what I just heard, appears to be a non-issue, because if it's the trees that are in the middle, they're coming down, then we don't need an arborist to tell us that they're coming down and they may have some illness to them. And as far as the infringement of the patio, the two owners can resolve that among themselves. That doesn't really impact the design of the house as I see it. I would not want to see a large sound wall at that front entrance where we are covering it with the bushes and rubble stone adequately to protect against headlights. And I don't know anyone that drives into their driveway that, you know, spends that much time and is that noisy that it's going to be an issue. I don't agree with the issue about safety on walking up Sessions. I live on mostly a one-lane road and people drive slow and be cautious, and you can share the road and walk on the same road. So I have absolutely no need to change anything at this point in time. In fact, I would like to keep the turnout that's in there. I'd like to leave it the way it is.
Thank you.
That's it.
John?
Okay, thanks. I mean, first I have to say, I agree with Ms. Holt regarding the severity of an unsupported allegation of an owner doing willful damage to a property in their own interest. I don't believe that the neighbor came with any evidence to support that, and it's disappointing to hear that kind of a statement from a neighbor. If the redwood trees are in poorer condition than they were 2 or 3 years ago, I have to say I'm not that surprised given what the drought is. There are redwood stands all around Lafayette that don't look as good as they did a few years ago. We hope they come back, but the drought has been very severe and redwoods have been hit. So I think that's more likely the cause. I agree with Glenn that the project, as it was modified during the course of review by the Planning Commission and the Design Review Commission, I believe has made ample efforts to respect the privacy of the Swartz property. And I do not feel that the other issues pointed out are significant, nor did the Planning Commission. So I do support the approval. If any of the trees that were intended to be screening trees are in poor health, Renata mentioned that our tree ordinance, there are remedies to deal with that. I support the project.
Thank you, John. I am in complete agreement with my colleagues. I believe that we went through a very thorough process to review and modify this project to reflect the Design Review Commission's responsibilities, and that the owners of the property have been very accommodating. I don't think there are any significant new considerations, if there are any new considerations that would direct us to do anything other than approve the project. I understand there is some concern about the trees, as Glenn says. If the ones that are damaged are the ones that would be removed, then it's not an issue. I don't think we have any proof that there has been damage to the trees. We obviously know that trees are living elements that respond to the climate and the drought. So if there are concerns, I think there needs to be an assessment, but I don't think that would limit our ability to approve the project now. So do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make that motion.
And I will second it.
Okay, and we will vote on it. Glenn,
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I also vote in favor of the resolution. The motion carries and the project is approved by the Design Review Commission and can move on to the next phase through permitting. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda would be other business, and we don't have any other business. It brings us to commissioners' reports, and there will be two items on the commissioners' report. We can start with item A, which is approved multifamily project site visits, the discussion of approved designs and constructed as-built for 3 different projects. And Nancy, I believe you will be presenting this.
Well, I will actually be.
Oh, you will be.
presenting, but She has the slides.
Got it.
So I'll have to ding and ask her to go to the next slide.
Got it.
So
Okay.
before I get started, I just let you know is that Eugene and I on Saturday went out to the sites. We had an enjoyable time doing this. Realize that when I show you these things, it's more like critique of construction than it is flaws of DRC. And there isn't any unique thing that we want us to do as a universal change, like do this or do that, you know. I'm going to show you some examples. For instance, we're going to talk about setback or shadow lines of windows, and we see some properties that, you know, did no setback and it worked because the eave stuck out or it wasn't that many windows or whatever, and we show other examples where it didn't work. And so that's just the general comment, is that there's no universal change that is going to be addressed out of this. So Nancy, can you boot up the Woodbury ones first?
Okay.
So Woodbury was addressed as 3 sites or 3 developments. And to be honest with you, is I think that Eugene and I mostly looked at development number 1 and to some extent development number 2 that was under construction. And development 3 is so uncompleted that there's nothing to review at this point in time. There's 3 main color schemes that occur in development. I'm going to call this development number 1. This, by the way, is the middle building, and it was our least favorite color scheme. Not that gray was bad, but it really turned out more like battleship gray, and it just wasn't. It would have been nice to tweak it a little bit, especially when you look at it compared to the other 2 buildings. The reason I took this slide is because there's 2 balcony conditions that are addressed here, okay? The first balcony condition is with the little pony wall and a small rail on the top, and the other one is with the glass enclosure. The glass enclosure does work from the standpoint is that it does project further back into the building, you know, so it does show relief from that standpoint. But I think I'll be able to show you some slides where when you start filling that up with furniture and you get this cheap plastic furniture that's out there in front of the glass, it doesn't enhance it at all. It makes it look like the pony wall with the little rail is a much better alternative design. Let's go to the next slide, please, Nancy. So this is the second color scheme. So this scheme, instead of being all stucco, is shingles, and it has a stone veneer on the bottom. This was a problem that both Eugene and I saw, is that, you know, it's gorgeous, the veneer. I don't show you the full building, but if you saw the whole building, it's gorgeous veneer and shingles. And then you come to this prominent corner, right, the front corner that you see. And it's the comment that we both Eugene and I made is, boy, they sure didn't get the best concrete guys working on these projects. There was a lot of concrete problems that we saw, but this was something that I'm a little surprised that the architect didn't come back and fix this. You know, this is really not a very enticing appearance at the front corner. And I don't, you know, from a design standpoint, I don't know if we missed that on DRC or what, but it's something that I think should be addressed, that needs
No,
correcting.
I think getting quality architectural concrete in the United States is almost impossible.
Yeah. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so you can see the overall. Now, one of the things that we looked at in particular is the articulation, okay? And we're looking at the articulation of all the 3 sites that we saw. One of the things that they did at this site is this articulation is probably sticking out, I'm going to say maybe about 15 inches. But what they did is they put a corner board in there that basically defined the corner rather than a wraparound material. And in both Eugene and my opinion is it popped it out more by doing that rather than just have it blend around. And we'll show you some pictures like at Brown where they did the bend around and it doesn't really have the same level of articulation. Again, that's not a universal thing. It's just a design thing. It worked at this site. You know, it might work on other sites as well. Next slide. Nothing in particular on this slide other than this was the 3rd color scheme that was available. Or no, that was the 2nd color scheme with the gray stucco. So again, when you look at this facade, it introduces more change in materials. So what really stood out is that side facade, which has a lot of visibility, is all stucco, and there's no change in that stucco on that one side, but it's much more enhanced on this facade. Next slide. Oh, this is a sort of a breezeway between the 2 buildings. You know, again, it's largely industrial or, you know, a lot of utilities and stuff like that. Again, you see the gray building on the one side, not very enhancing appearance. The main water system, fire system is not painted out. We'll show you another site where they did paint it out black and it matched or blends in with the dark bark much better. So it doesn't become such a visible item, which is basically an eyesore that's on there. So it appears like the fire marshal would allow them to paint it out, but they chose not to paint it out at this site. Next picture. Again, that's just another view of, you know, you have a lot of utility type stuff. It just happens, you know, you can't really get rid of it. You have to put it somewhere. Next slide. Oh, this is a sound wall that's up against the freeway. And I don't know if this was actually put in for the purpose of being a sound wall or what the criteria was. Again, I have to apologize because I had to recuse myself from this project. And so I had no idea what I was actually going to be looking at until I actually went there. I never looked at any drawings and never did anything. Just for your future reference is that this wall doesn't work for acoustical purposes. If you have 10% opening in a wall, it's virtually no wall. And there's about 10% opening in this wall. In between each of these slats is open. In between the set of slats, it's open. So this sound wall is really non-functional as a sound wall.
And Glenn, the freeway is not up the hill, it's straight across there?
No, actually, I didn't time it right because you could see cars. If I had another slide, you could see the cars going right behind that, but exactly behind that screen. Okay, and as well as the BART train, you could see the BART train going by. Okay, next slide. Oh, this was a weird treatment. Again, this is a minor critique. For some reason, they went through and they painted the underside of all this stone area white. So I don't know if they were trying to make this like float above the landscape dark bark or what they were trying to do, but both Eugene and I thought, why did you paint it white? Just paint it the color of the stone or whatever, make it high, you know, but
I
blend
bet
it
that's
in.
a waterproofing product and nobody thought about the color.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's not everywhere though, John. There's some areas that and then the next building over, it's on like the first 10 feet, not the rest. So it's inconsistent. So, but you might be right. It may be a waterproofing material. Okay, next slide. Yeah, again, you can see that same white waterproofing stuff, you know, below the batten board, at the bottom of the batten board. Okay, next slide. Again, this is the gray building that was the least favorite for us. One of the other things, I think I have better slides of it, is that there's fire extinguishers on the outside of these garage doors on both ends of the building. And this is the only multifamily housing unit that I've seen with fire extinguishers that are visible on the outside of the building. That's the white case that you see next to the garage door. Next. Yeah, that's what it is. It's a fire extinguisher cabinet. Is that the end of what's happening here?
Yes, this is the last image.
Yeah, that's all right. It's the same thing as we saw at the beginning, is that the treatment on that white corner is not great. Overall, this was probably the best construction and the best, one of the best, it was definitely the best constructed project. And I think one of the better of the three projects as far as articulation, design, colors, so on and so forth. Okay, why don't we go to Brown Avenue?
Before we leave this one, can I just make a comment? Glenn, I took this a little bit as like Glenn's pop quiz.
Yeah.
And so when I looked at these properties, and in the case of Woodbury, I chose to look from outside the site for public impact. The main thing that I noticed that I was disappointed in is not the buildings or the landscape that is just starting to grow in. The signage, the advertising signage that they have on the slope facing Mount Diablo Boulevard has these giant red fluttering banners. Nancy, is that something that they applied for and the city approved? Because it is awful.
I don't believe so. I think that was an issue brought up previously. I believe there was a short moratorium for signage because of COVID, but I think that is expired or going to expire.
Well, if it's
also, John, I think
staff
there's some
purview to
exemptions for real estate signs, because the real estate people put the sandwich signs on the street corners and other stuff, and there's some exemption for real estate signs that I remember looking at the ordinance once.
Well, the sign is not beautiful itself, but what I find really offensive is the towering, fluttering banners next to it in, you know, hazard red. And if that's something that staff can take care of, that would be nice for everybody who drives by.
I'll look into it.
Thank you.
Okay. Move on to Brown. Okay, so this is at the corner of Brown Avenue and Mount Diablo, and this is the back of the building. And, you know, this is a weird detail, because what this is there's roof gardens or roof decks that are up there. And part of the problem may have been caused by me, because I was asked to come out and do a site visit during the construction. What they realized is that they could extend some of the roof decks further out than what they originally intended. And so they asked if it was okay for them to do that and put this little short rail that you see there up on top of it. And when you look at it from a distance from the building, I think that part works. But what I didn't really realize is that they have an intermediate screen that goes between one townhouse and the next. And that one is to try to hide the visibility of looking on the next person's deck. And I really didn't think that this detail was very enhancing the way it came out, where this wall, because I pushed out the railing above, it pushed that wall way out as well. And that's just my opinion on that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So again, you're just seeing the articulation. So the articulation of the red brick, there's no corner trim or anything. We thought that the red brick worked fine because there was a texturing of the brick itself. And even though the depth of that is only about 12 inches, it was, in our opinion, both Eugene and my opinion, it worked. It was okay at that facade. Let's go to the next picture. That's Eugene. Okay, next picture. Oh, you know, the other thing is that it has a very industrial look. So what happened is that the downspouts, everything is very visible. You know, it's not trying to blend it into the wall material and hide it. It becomes a very visible element. And it fits into the sort of a semi-industrial type screen theme. That's what they advertised is industrial residential design. Next. So this is the end of the joint driveway to the garage entrance, and there's a big, large fence there. And what you don't see is that there's small little rose bushes in between these cypress trees. And so those roses will be climbing roses. So eventually, in another couple of years, that fence will be all engulfed with roses, you know, rose vines going up through it. So I just wanted to let you know that. And one of the things that they did in this space was they tried to make it more of a community space so that it wouldn't be just a driveway, that they could have sort of social gatherings in that space. So they strung lights up, you know, back and forth across the driveway. It's okay. It doesn't do very much. It doesn't give you that feel like, oh, this has really enhanced it, but it's there.
It draws your eye to the garbage cans at the end of the driveway, huh?
Yeah, that was also an interesting thing, because as far as I could tell, there's only maybe one tenant that's moved into this development. So there's 12 empty townhouses. And the one development is the very first cornered unit. And the garbage cans are out here. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is what they're going to do every week, aren't they? They're just going to wheel those cans to the end of the street, and then they're going to sit out there indefinitely. Okay, next. Again, this same screen shows up against the meters and the utilities. So eventually the roses will grow up in there, and it will help screen those elements. So right now they're very visible, but eventually hopefully within a year, they'll be more screened. Although it is an element that when you look at it, you're going to say to yourself is, okay, 9 months of the year or 8 months of the year, it's going to be screened by roses, but 4 months of the year, I'm going to see those utilities again, because the leaves will come off and they'll be visible again. Okay, next. Okay, so this is just a linear view down the back. Again, we thought the articulation was okay there. Again, you can see that higher privacy barrier that's sticking up between each of the units. Next. Oh, this was John, you might remember this. This is were you involved in this?
I was not involved in
Maybe
the
not.
review of this one, no.
Okay. this corner was one that we worked a lot to try to figure out what would work or not work. And so this was a revised design after several hearings, and I think it worked. I think that this is the corner entry off of Brown Street. Obviously it has the for sale sign right now, but the window placements, the coloration, everything I think worked. The size of the windows down below. I mean, we went back and forth on what would work and not work. And I think that we ended up with an acceptable design right there. Next. Okay, so this is the front facade. Again, you're not seeing the whole facade, but it's brick veneer down on the first floor. And then up above, one of the things they have is this batten that sort of has that black, almost burnt wood look to it. And the windows, there's literally, they're all flush to the exterior. There's no shadowing, there's no setback. We didn't like it. We really didn't like that. And I watched this building when it was being built, and it kept going from, well, it's okay, to, oh, I can't stand this. Oh, it's okay again. But it's one of the areas that I think that that I've heard comments made by us before, especially on the other one that I recused myself from. I heard your comments about the one on Mount Diablo Boulevard about, forcing those shadow lines, especially when you get to a fourth floor or something like that. It really enhances the design from having it just flush with the outside facade.
Yeah,
Next.
I mean, if I may, just for a moment, when I looked at this building, the fact that, there were some substantial looking materials with this wafer thin glass treatment, even in the brick, the windows are set exactly flush. I was gratified that we asked that Mount Diablo property, really kind of pushed them to do something they weren't really volunteering to do, which was create relief in the facade by recessing the glass. I think it is very important. In this building, the brick looks completely incongruous with the windows. This board siding, I agree with your comments, Glenn. I think that in the stucco, where they have some projecting framing elements, was more successful in my view. But a taut facade in combination with substantial materials just ends up looking strange.
Yeah. Next slide. Just so you know, they put these core 10 boxes there for planners. They're actually pretty nice. You missed the artwork if you go back there. I didn't get a real picture, but this is the art that they put in, the little birds that are on the stand, and they're throughout the facade, throughout the front facade and the side facade. Next. Okay, so again, just as contrast to the other building, the brick veneer came down. They didn't have good concrete work, but at least they painted it out there. So it sort of looks like the brick is extended down, we thought that was better than painting it white and making it obvious. Next. No, next.
We're seeing the slides change, Glenn.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing the slide change at all.
Oh, yes.
And Kristen, you're muted.
It's a picture of a window, black window frame and the stucco.
No, I'm still on the other picture that had the
Oh, well.
with the red brick, veneer.
Well, we've seen Nancy
here.
scroll through a couple.
Yeah, okay. Again, this is just petty Annie type stuff, but you see that aluminum framing on the stucco, I mean, their painter did a horrible job. He could have painted those out and hid all those. And sometimes they're hidden on the top third of the window and the bottom 2/3 are exposed. I mean, it's just sloppiness. Go ahead, next. Yeah, see, again, you're coming with two materials to coming together, and it's just a sloppy job. Or we thought it was sloppy. I thought it was sloppy.
I
Next.
certainly agree.
Next, is it? Yeah, this just shows the interface between that and the next property. So it's a little fence extension. And again, downspouts are all visible. You know, John, your opinion there is that, yeah, the stucco, the articulation of the stucco sticking out is better than the siding, that black siding. The black siding just didn't really do it for us. And by the way, since none of you were on the DRC at that time, this was not the color scheme that was approved by DRC. This project went to planning after it went to DRC, and planning didn't like the color scheme and changed the color scheme.
They can do that?
That's what they did.
We have less power than we thought.
Yes, we sure do.
They rely on us to advise them on things like that.
Well, because they thought that the original color scheme was too close to Merrill Gardens, which is just down the street. And they wanted to see something that was more different. And when they originally put this building up, okay, the original stucco came out to be sort of yellowish. And it wasn't even the color that was approved. And then at some point in time, they came back and made it more taupey. So, you know, it was things that happened. I mean, I wasn't in control of that, but I noticed that when it was being built, it's like, oh my God, this is awful. I mean, that's what I said is there were times when I think this is okay, this is awful, this is okay, this is awful. Okay, next. I don't even know why this is in there. Okay, next.
I mean, it's a little bit awkward the way that downspout kicks around that cornice line.
Yeah. They're all visible.
I like the gutters that you see, but that just is kind of not as well done. You think they could have come up with a way of getting that around there without creating a big knee.
Next. You don't like the V?
I said knee.
Oh, knee. Oh, I thought it was a V. Oh, this is another thing that happened that was sort of outside of our control. So they had a little water retention thing, bioretention area in this front area, okay? And they put in 2 benches. So this was their community meeting type area, you know, that everyone can come out there. And the mailboxes are nearby, but they're pointed in the opposite direction. So it's not like everyone comes to their mail and sits down and reads their mail or something. But there were 2 benches that were put in. We think it was the city afterwards to put this bench in. So what happened is they designated the curb in front of this building now a bus stop. And they put this bench in at the bus stop. And if you go to the next slide, it was like, okay, if you wanted a bench, why didn't you just go with the same bench all around? So we have 2 different style of benches they're put in. And again, the other thing that Eugene and I were talking about is that even though there's roses that will grow up over this stuff, everything is the original paint job and all the panel boards and everything. So everything is sort of very apparent, you know. And one of the next slides is even the mailboxes are the standard mailbox color. And go ahead and so it doesn't really enhance the view. It's not a good selection of color for as something as visible as that. Next. Oops. Concrete work. Every light is on a different angle. Next. Scuppers coming out, they're all different colors. You know, they could have painted those out and had them all the same.
One was probably a vent and the other one's an overflow scupper.
Yeah, sure.
But wouldn't it be nice if they looked the same?
Yeah.
Maybe even a line.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Sure. Next. Well, this was just, we were looking at, we thought the concrete job was horrible, but the other thing that we noticed is that they didn't put the little skateboard cleats on there. So this is going to get torn up by people riding skateboards on this wall.
Maybe for the better in this case, right?
Huh?
Maybe that will help. Yeah.
Next, I think we're off of this site. Oh, no, we got some in the back. Okay. Oh, this is not the best view to see it, but if you look up on the roof line, you see the one that has the black facade. You look at the peak of the roof, you see that little white on the side. So it was really weird because what happened is when you go to the brick facade, that little peak is all red brick. But when you go to the other facades, it's untreated. So it actually looks like it's not even painted out to be the same color. It just looks weird that you got this piece of unfinished roof line up there. And again, this is where you see those privacy things on the rooftop that really project out quite a bit, you know, so I didn't think that really enhanced the appearance. Next. This is just the rear, you know, unusual lighting fixture. It's sort of handmade or something, which the little hangman's noose. Next. That was that little white area at the top that I said was unfinished. Yeah, exactly.
And they should just paint that to match, and that should be the end of it.
Yeah. Next. And again, I can't see that very well, but if you blew that up, you'd see that that's brick on the one that's brick. So it's been enhanced on one, but not on the other. Next. I don't know what that, oh yeah, that's just to show the brick, that you can see the brick up there on that rooftop. Next. So John, just so you know, there is a sort of a shadow line of about 3/4 of an inch on the brick veneer in the windows. You know, not very much, but definitely more than on the batten board or the stucco.
All that is
Nothing
the
on
thickness of the brick face tile.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. Next.
That's the last image.
Okay, so we can go to the Lafayette Circle. Okay, so Lafayette Circle is sort of a modern design, and it has a feature that's supposed to make it look more like steel construction or something, or more like metal construction. So they have these bands that run horizontally across the building. And the problem is that when we looked at those on the architectural renderings, you know, it looked, you know, it was a nice industrial looking project. In reality, what it turns out to be is it turns out to be about 1/32 inch sheet metal that it's designed off of, you know. So every 6 feet, you see the little pop rivets that are on it. You go to the next slide. And you see it's dimpled, it's bowed, if it had been a little bit more substantial, the metal itself, it would have given a better appearance, but it doesn't look, I mean, because it's so inconsistent there, it doesn't give that appearance of being a structural element.
So here's a question then. I mean, because Glenn, I certainly agree with what you're saying. If we see something installed that does not match the design intent as represented to us in the drawings, I mean, the quality level that a drawing represents compared to what is built, do we have recourse to ask the property developer to do something that looks like their presentation drawings?
Are you asking me if we do?
Maybe
or are
I'm
you telling me
asking
that we
Nancy.
do? I don't think we do. I mean, that the inspector can say something, yeah.
I mean, we don't say in our discussion must be of a certain gauge or shall not dimple, right?
No,
I
well, we
mean,
do say that you shall not deviate from the approved drawings, and I would call this a deviation.
Well, it is something that stood out to us, okay? I mean, when you're talking about the minimum unit here is selling for $1.8 million. You know, I sort of want a little bit better construction for my $1.8 million, you know? But that's what it is. I mean, you know, again, not to be overcritical, but this was what we considered the least well constructed. Okay, the next picture. So again, there's articulation here. This is a weird detail too, because I don't think you see it completely, but you have the tan colored batten, and then you have this hardy type finish that's gray. And so they have this 3/4 inch, 1 inch wide white caulk line that runs between the two. And I was trying to ask Eugene if he thought that that was intentional, that they left that white, or what it was, you know, that it was white. And we decided at the end that it was just shoddy construction, because some areas it was painted out and some areas it wasn't painted out. So it was inconsistent. But it was odd, because I did say, well, it does sort of enhance the articulation between the two, because you have this dividing line between it with this white line. But anyway, next. I don't know. Oh yeah, this is another one of the white caulk, you know, up against stucco. I mean, why they didn't just paint it out to the stucco color, I don't know. Next.
Because the painter was there first.
Again, they covered the bottom shoddy concrete work by putting sheet metal in there, but it's not done up very well. It's inconsistent, it's buckled, it's cheap, it's not well done. Next slide. You can see it's not even caulk. I mean, they could have caulked that, or they could have screwed that in, or they could have caulked it and had a better appearance in there. Next. Yeah, again, you know, they have this caulking that is untreated or unpainted, and it's unsightly, you know. In some areas it's pure white, but here it's just very unsightly. Next. Yeah, the sheet metal work was just horrible here. Flashings are just all bowed. Next. This light tan strip you see there is just exposed wood that's below grade. It's just dry rot waiting to happen. Termite people will love this site eventually. Next. Again, caulking, just, you know, sort of, I thought, shoddy construction, or not well done, not well detailed. Next. Oh, this was really weird, because this unit was supposed to have, this building was supposed to have one, I don't know what you call it, subsidized housing unit, or, you know, affordable housing unit. And this was originally supposed to be a small retail in the front corner. Well, they turned the affordable unit into the retail into the affordable unit. So the affordable unit has wall-to-wall glass all around it. It's like, okay, I
How was
hope
that
they can
change
find
approved?
affordable
Does
curtains for
anybody-
them. Because it's gonna be really expensive for them to make that a livable space.
Does anybody here know how that change was approved?
No idea.
I mean, that's very
that
substantial.
seems, and that seems like a pretty clear thing. There's no like, oh, the quality of construction, like there's no shades on that. Like, sorry, bad choice, but like, there's no like interpretation here. Like, this is just very different.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we had, like I said, it was supposed to be, quote, a little retail thing. We didn't know what it was gonna be. They just said retail, you know? And, but
Just want
Right.
to add, I did do a site visit after they got their final inspection, and they had mentioned that this was a live workspace unit.
I know, but you want to live in a glass wall or glass enclosure? I mean, you know how close that is to the sidewalk in appearance. There's nothing, and this somehow became the affordable unit though. Well, anyway, next. Oh, here, see at this site, they took the valves and they painted them out black and it matches with the black bark. So we thought that that was a better, you know, better concealing mechanism for that type of site.
Until you look at the giant one to the left of here.
Yeah, well, yeah, the next photo, I think you'll have it. But almost.
You
So
strategically place that
if you go
person.
back to that previous, one of the things I have to say about this is that, you know, we were complaining about flush on the building at Brown Street. Well, most of the windows on this unit are flush also, but you don't have the same feeling because the eaves stick well out, you know, it creates more of a shadow line by the eaves themselves. I mean, it really didn't have anywhere near the same.
And the flush windows didn't bother me looking at this in the same way at all, because there is great relief in the overall facade.
Yeah. And also, if you see what we did, you know, what was done on this is, again, the little pony wall. You know, so the advantage of the pony wall is that you don't see everybody's garbage on their deck, you know, especially at the lower levels where it's really apparent. You know, so you're not seeing the lower level stuff where, you know, all the shoes are laying out there or the bag of charcoal briquettes or, you know, so it gives a better, cleaner appearance. And again, if you talk to the owners, they'll say, oh, well, we can cover that with the covenants in the building, but the property managers don't go around and enforce those covenants. So you end up with whatever people throw on their deck, it becomes very visible. Next. I don't know why. I mean, nothing in particular on that slide. I thought maybe the valve was down below there, but maybe I
Maybe it's in
can't
your
tell.
next slide. You couldn't miss it.
Yeah, get next. No. Next.
So oh, there
There it is. Yeah, you can't miss it. It's very visible.
And so naturally, I compared this to the rendering of that facade, and goodness, it wasn't shown.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't.
You know,
But
so,
on the other hand, you know, at least when it's painted out black, it isn't like, wow, you know, it just isn't, you know, you have an orange component to it. It just stands out like crazy. Yeah.
But that little red post, the PIV over there, is not half as offensive as this giant black thing, and there had to be a way to screen it. But it was never presented in the materials that you shared with us.
Well, I don't think the fire marshal wants you to screen it. You know,
Well,
I think he wants to have open access to it.
There are, I mean, we've talked about this in other projects. I mean, this is right on the sidewalk, right in front of, somebody's patio, and it's pretty nasty. There's got to be a better way that meets fire department needs and is safe and is technically adequate and is not this visually prominent.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, Eugene asks oftentimes, how are you doing the vents? How are you doing the scuppers? How are you doing this? Where are the downspouts, So it does become a big issue that these little details sometimes are what really can ruin an otherwise good facade.
But I mean, this thing stands 4 feet high. I mean, this is not just
Yeah.
something little.
Yeah, I don't know what to say, John. I mean, if the water comes in there, I don't know where else you put it, I mean, yeah, it's
On
a problem.
that same project on Mount Diablo Boulevard we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
We asked the applicant to do something up against the Mount Diablo Boulevard frontage with landscape and screening behind and they were able to do it and get the fire department to approve it. It took a little bit of site depth to do it, which might be tougher here.
Yeah. So if you went to those 3 sites, which ones did you think worked the best, John?
From a distance, I liked this building. I wish that the white was not so bright. And I was there on a sunny day, and it was gleaming. I mean, it was crazy punchy white.
Well, we were on a rainy day,
yeah,
so it was more tempered. But I think there's one more slide. We both, Eugene and I agreed that the signage on the building is too big. The font is too large. It's out of proportion for what it should be. The placement is okay. It just is, it's very large. So that's it. I mean,
on this facade, I find those little tiny muntins incongruous with the otherwise more modern look. I kind of question that. I liked the facades on this in terms of design. I did not like the execution, as you guys didn't. And I didn't like the bright white color. And I thought the way it met the street was really compromised by those piped utilities.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Is from a distance, I like this the best. But then when you really got up and looked at the construction, it just didn't. It didn't match it.
The project at the corner of Mount Diablo and Brown.
Yeah,
I just found had this kind of half-baked feeling. It's like they pushed the button to build it from schematics, and it just did not have the refinement, even though the basis of the design seemed okay. I would have liked to seen it detailed better, even though it looked like it was built okay.
Yeah, no, I think it was built okay. Yeah, I mean, there were some minor problems with it, but it was built okay. It just is it was very flat in the design. It just, and I think it also it made it even flatter because you had just enough units in a line, 6 in a row, that, you're trying to have a sort of a townhouse with the stoop, and the stoops aren't, the front facade is too close to the sidewalk, so the stoops are immaterial. They're not big enough to be really like a brownstone back east or something. And there's not enough variety in articulation. It's just like, you have 3 designs and you just lay them in a row next to each other, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, it just wasn't enough.
You can see that behind all of that was maximizing square footage for resale value.
Yeah, well, the only thing is that they're not selling. I mean, I can't address that, but they're not selling. The Lafayette Circle is almost completely sold out. I think there's 2 units left. But, and I don't know how Woodbury is doing, but, Brown Avenue, because there's little placards that say available, model home and available, and almost
You
everything
know,
except the one with
it's
the
very
garbage cans.
urban on a very
Huh?
busy traffic street. You know,
Yeah.
would you want your window to be, 3 feet from the sidewalk and another 6 feet from the street?
Yeah. Okay, well, that's what I had to contribute. I mean, I thought it was worthwhile for me to sort of go back and reflect on things that we've done.
I think that was great. Thank you, Glenn. The question I would ask now, is there anything we would do differently as a commission to try to see that what we think we're going to get, we really do get? And the one suggestion that I get right off is, should we require more partial facade mock-ups that show the various conditions coming together, so that somebody can point at that caulk and say, I mean, shoddy workman, the workmanship expectation you establish with a mock-up along with the material design. And I would recommend that for the multifamily projects, we really should make sure that a substantial facade mock-up is.
I'm actually quite surprised that those contractors, those are big name contractors for local, that their own project managers don't enforce the subs to do a better job, finish that out, paint that up, fix that.
They're aggressively bid. And
Yeah.
if the developer is okay with it, nobody is gonna enforce it from that side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay,
this is really
well,
interesting. Thank you.
Didn't mean to take up your whole evening.
All right, well, we have a couple more items on the agenda. The next item would be my report, as I hinted at early in the meeting, that going forward, the Design Review Commission meetings will no longer be on Zoom due to the change in the state regulation, and the meetings will be moved, as I understand, to Monday evenings and be held in person. The state does allow for some accommodation for some meetings to be held with a hybrid component. So there will be some technology used to allow members of the public to access the meetings remotely. So at this point, that is the plan going forward for the Design Review Commission.
Okay, so Nancy, can you get us a revised schedule? And when you get us a revised schedule, can you look at Thanksgiving week in advance so that we're not,
Oh, this
we're
year the
not-
schedule did not have a meeting set for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so thank you for that.
But now it's Monday.
Yeah.
I think it was the Wednesday conflict at the Art and Science Discovery Center at the library was just recently discovered within the last couple of days. So I think that once we look at the calendar, I think we'll have to go back to City Council for approval, but we will definitely run it by the DRC. I do want to bring up that the next meeting is March 1st. Considering we don't have Wednesday availability in that particular room, the director had recommended bringing it to Monday that same week, the 27th, instead of March 1st.
So that would still be Zoom then, because it
Yes.
starts March 1st. Okay.
That way we wouldn't have to do a special meeting the following week, and then there's another regular scheduled meeting the following for DRC. So instead of back-to-back weeks for DRC, this still spreads it out.
So can I ask about logistics and how this is going to work?
In terms of the hybrid
the
meeting,
physical
or-
space, we're going to be sitting on the dais just like the old days. I mean, in the real old days, there were boards. I assume we're doing electronic presentation. How do we view that? I mean, we're going to look at the drawings ahead of time as we've been. No change there. Is it going to be a single large screen someplace? Are we all going to have laptops? What, I mean,
So there would be, I believe there will be a screen, so people can, whoever's participating remotely, you would be able to see as well. Renata did mention to get a poll from commissioners to see if they would like iPads or laptops in front of them so we can, I guess, purchase that and have it ready, unless you want paper copies, but I believe we're moving away from all that.
I don't want paper. I'm happy to bring my own iPad if that's helpful. Or a laptop, except that I'll definitely need an outlet for it because my battery totally doesn't work. How are we going to be on camera? How does that work?
There should be a setup. I believe Suzanne Yarla has it set up in the Art and Science Center. There is a camera that would detect whoever's speaking. So since you'll be there in the room, it'll automatically detect you and put your face on YouTube or on Zoom for those participating remotely.
And if a participant calls in, do they come up on the Zoom screen in front of everybody?
Yes.
Well, it'll be interesting. I look forward to it.
So the next meeting, I believe, we would need to do a special meeting for. I just want to take a poll if we should put that out there and have our next noticing go out. I believe to meet the deadline for the 10-day noticing, it is tomorrow. So we need to decide today if we want a February 27th meeting.
Which would be just like this.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm fine with that.
So the next meeting would be February 27th, and then following that would be 2 weeks from that, like we'd be the 13th of March or the 6th.
Let me see. It should be the opposite day of planning commission.
It was always the second and fourth Monday of each month.
Got it. Okay.
Originally. It coincided with city council. We coincided with city councils.
So it'd be so we do the 27th and the 13th and 27th. Okay.
Well, I can make February 27th where I'll just miss my son's birthday.
Celebrate on the weekend.
He's never around anyhow. He always has something else to do.
I can make it work. So I think we should be able to do it.
Okay.
For the first time we meet in person, either, I mean, I wonder about doing some kind of a dry run with the technology, or if you will all have done that without us and we just get to kind of waltz in.
Yes. Staff will be doing the dry run.
So John, you never, yeah. You know, to be honest is we never had a problem ever.
Okay.
I mean, before, I mean, I can't even answer to you what, I mean, I didn't bring a laptop or an iPad or anything.
And you didn't bring anything
everything
but your
was
notes.
presentable. Yeah. There's a little stand for people to stand, you know, for the presentation to stand at or whatever. And all the electronic connections to put it up on a white screen is all there. And it never was a problem. The only problem might be is how to interface the two with Zoom.
So I would like to bring a small screen device of my own. You know, and my laptop that I'm using right now is definitely got a bigger, better screen than the iPad, but I do need to plug in. Will there be an outlet for me to plug into?
I will make sure that there would be any extensions not necessary, but yeah, there should
and
be.
I think I will have any files I need on the computer. I would not need a network or Wi-Fi access.
I imagine a number of us would bring computers, and there's, you know, it's really nice to be able to zoom in on the drawings and look closely.
or refer to something else or read the comments or any of those things.
Okay. All right, well, I think we've resolved our questions and scheduling related to that. So that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is staff liaisons report. Nancy, are there any reports?
No, there are not.
Okay, well, that completes tonight's meeting, and with that, we can adjourn unless there's any other.
So is there ARC?
Oh,
It doesn't say.
it
If
doesn't.
it's not, yeah, if it's not on the agenda, we can't speak about art, but we would reach out. I believe we just did art last week. There was just one item, and it was determined just to be, I think, either zoning administrator or administratively approvable. But there were no
Okay,
applications really.
well, Anne can contact me if she has a need.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a good week.
Right.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, Nancy.